All right, guys, we have a good show lined up for you on a Monday. A lot of news to get to, a lot to cover from over the weekend. Obviously, that Virginia Tech game was pretty devastating. We'll talk about the UVA Virginia Tech game, some thoughts of that game that I want to relay to you. The third down play, throwing a lateral to an offensive lineman, obviously is a concern for all of us, and so much to cover today, including the future of some on the coaching staff and where we go from here for Virginia football. I thought that Virginia game was something that Virginia had a very good opportunity to win, and some of the play calling down the stretch really have left a lot of us scratching our heads. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Chief Brackney's deadline that has now passed. The city did not respond to Chief Brackney's demands for $3 million. We'll cover that today on the program. Former city manager Dr. Richardson is now suing the city of Charlottesville. The saga continues with retired or fired employees and their actions and what they're going to do from a city standpoint when it comes to litigation. So we'll talk about Dr. Richardson suing the city. 2 former employees now suing Charlottesville. I got a John Dewberry update for you. John Dewberry, of course, the developer behind the skeleton that's on the downtown mall. Well, he has another skeleton, this time in Atlanta, that is derelict and needing significant attention, and he's just frankly ignoring it. So much to cover on the program. Judah Whitcower is our director. Give me 10 seconds and we can rock and roll, J-Dubs. Good Monday afternoon, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love Seville show. Thank you for joining us on a cold Monday. We have a lot to cover, including some composed, non-emotional perspective following that UVA Virginia Tech heartbreaker in Scott Stadium, a game that saw Virginia Tech fans rush the field and plant the Hokie flag at the 50-yard line of our home turf. A third down call that will live in infamy in perpetuity, one in which we saw Brennan Armstrong throw a lateral to an offensive lineman from the 8-yard line that sputtered before it ever had a chance to get to the end zone. Why you would throw a lateral to an offensive lineman in a critical third down situation, only Bronco Mendenhall and his staff will know. I'm going to offer you some perspective from the Virginia Tech game. We'll analyze what went wrong and the future of many members of this coaching staff today on the I Love Seville show. We have a new lawsuit that we need to cover, this time from Dr. Richardson, the former city manager. He alleges that his First Amendment rights were violated when he was relieved of his city manager responsibilities. A lot to cover on the program, including Chief Brackney's Black Friday deadline the day after Thanksgiving. It is now behind us. The city did not respond to her demands of $3 million and a Black Friday deadline. Now it's up to Charles Tucker Jr. of the late Johnny Cochran's law firm to follow through on demands issued in front of City Hall saying Tucker and his firm, along with his client, Chief Brackney, will now sue the city of Charlottesville. We'll cover that topic today in the program. We will also give you an update on Johnny Dewberry, the extorting emperor of empty lots. Of course, he's the owner of the skeleton on the downtown mall that was once called the Dewberry Hotel. Now the former Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket quarterback and extorting emperor of empty lots is up to the same strategy, but this time in Atlanta with a 21-story office tower. That story for you on the I Love Seville show. We'll thank IMBS Medical Services for being a part of the show. IMBS Medical Services is just a fantastic medical billing and services company. IMBSinc.com, IMBSinc.com. The company, over 25 years of experience in medical billing, IMBS Medical Services. Judah Wickhauer is our director. We'll start today's program with some analysis, unemotional, from UVA's loss to Virginia Tech. I watched the game at home with my mom and dad, my wife and my son. As we all know who follow Virginia football, as all of us who follow Virginia football, the game against Virginia Tech means quite a bit. It meant quite a bit for Virginia because there's tremendous talent on the roster, and frankly, we've sputtered to end the campaign. We lost to BYU. We were competitive in that game until Brennan Armstrong went out in the fourth quarter with broken ribs. We got shellacked by Notre Dame on national television in Scott Stadium. Brennan Armstrong returns in a game at Heinz Field against Pittsburgh, was the best player on the field. We fell a little bit short, and unfortunately, the loss to Pittsburgh a couple of weekends ago dashed our hopes to win the Coastal Division title and play in the ACC championship. We have an opportunity to end the season with an exclamation point and head into the bowl season with the victory against Virginia Tech. This is a Hokie football team that's a shadow of the Hokie football teams we know from the Frank Beamer days. They have an interim head coach after firing Justin Fuente a couple weeks ago. They have their best wide receiver on the sidelines not playing. They have a quarterback carousel under center. And frankly, it's just not an imposing Virginia Tech football team. We were a 7-point favorite according to the odds makers in Vegas. And in the first half, we looked like the better team. Our offense was clicking, and our defense was opportunistic. I thought heading into the second half, we had a very good shot to win the ball game. Then in the second half, it was a completely different club that showed up for the third stanza in the fourth quarter. We struggled to score. Our defense looked like the defense we've seen all season long. Swiss cheese-like and porous. Brennan Armstrong, again, taking hit after hit after hit. This time, an ankle injury that left Brennan Armstrong not at 100%. I'm going to offer you some perspective from what I saw, not only watching the game at real time, but painfully watching a replay, a second time of this contest. First, let's talk about attendance in the stands. Arch rival Virginia Tech, and there were significant empty seats at Scott Stadium. It was far from a sellout. That has to concern the athletic department and the fan base that UVA is not selling out against its arch rival. If we want to be big-time college football, we sell out this game, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The second concern that we have to have, as I'm reading my notes, there were a ton of Virginia Tech fans at Scott Stadium. A significant amount of Virginia Tech fans. I was watching the game on television in North Carolina with my family. Traveled to North Carolina for Thanksgiving. the Hokie fans were noticeably louder than the UVA fans on the TV broadcast, on the radio broadcast. Noticeably louder. I'm left scratching my head how in a in-state rivalry game that has tremendous implications for recruiting, how there are empty seats, and how Virginia Tech fans get so many tickets to this contest at Scott Stadium. It's perplexing and it's aggravating. I continue the analysis from an unemotional perspective. I was very emotional on Friday and very emotional on Saturday. The defense, UVA's, has been horrible, putrid this season. Absolutely putrid this season. But on Saturday against the Hokies, Virginia's defense made enough plays to win this ball game. When you score 3 points in the second half, that's what UVA did. That right there is the cause for concern, especially with a prolific, high-flying, high-scoring attack. The defense made enough plays on Saturday to win the game. I think we immediately have to go to that final drive. And on that final drive, you have to ask yourself why you would throw the ball in a lateral, third down and long situation from inside the red zone to an offensive lineman instead of throwing the football to what is a deep wide receiving core. Thompson has height. Wicks played a terrible game. Wicks, the wide receiver, did not have a good game. He dropped at least 3 passes, including a touchdown. But you have Thompson, you have Wicks, you have Woods, a tight end that's 6'7", 260 pounds that can box out any defender in college football. You have Henry, another talented wide receiver. You have tailbacks who can catch the ball out of the backfield. Drawing up a gadget gimmick play for an offensive lineman and expecting that offensive lineman to catch the ball behind the line of scrimmage and then essentially run 8 to 10 yards into the end zone is boneheaded. It's absolutely boneheaded. The play calling I saw down the stretch, perplexing at best. Terrible more realistically. You have to ask yourself these questions if you're a Virginia football fan. What are the changes Bronco Mendenhall is going to make on the coaching staff? Will we see Nick Howell, the defensive coordinator, let go? Will we see Ricky Brumfield, the special teams coach, let go? What kind of transfers will we see from the Virginia football team? Will Brennan Armstrong be one of the individuals who transfers from UVA football? Remember, we got a basketball program led by one of the best coaches in the country in Tony Bennett. And fresh off a national championship from 2 years ago. And still Tony Bennett dealt with transfers. Lost Casey Morsell to NC State. Lost Abdul Rahim to Georgia. And lost Mr. McCoy to North Carolina. If a basketball coach that is one of the best in the nation in Tony Bennett, fresh off a national championship, is losing 3 of his best players in Morsell and Abdul Rahim and McCoy and the transfer portal, you can certainly expect a football team that is not fresh off a national championship, a football team that has closed the season with 4 straight losses, a football team that has a coaching staff that is going to have massive turnover, especially on the defensive side of the ball, A football team whose fan base is splintered and aggravated and frustrated with the product on the field. You can certainly expect that football team will have transfers this offseason. And the kingpin on this roster, numero uno, the alpha dog, is Brennan Armstrong. If you're Brennan Armstrong and you have hopes of playing in the National Football League, do you return for another year knowing that you're going to lose a lot of your key talent on the offensive side of the ball, knowing the defense could be potentially worse next year, knowing the coaching staff is in peril? Ask yourself that question. Did you find it odd or perplexing that Brennan Armstrong's parents were highlighted on the Jumbotron? I did. Did you find it odd or perplexing that Bronco and the coaching staff try to block a kick, a punt, when they should have just been in return coverage? A block punt attempt that led to a roughing the passer penalty that gave Virginia Tech a first down and allowed them to put 3 more points on the board because of the roughing the punter penalty that kept the drive alive. There's a game left. Virginia is bowl eligible. The fans that think we should turn down this bowl invitation, I don't disagree. I don't agree with that. You take the bowl invite. It's not going to be a sexy bowl. It's going to be a low-tier bowl. Should be a low-tier bowl. Should be a low-tier bowl. It's not a great football team. It's a football team that's sputtering into the postseason right now. But you take the low-tier bowl invitation because you get extra practices. And you get another game to potentially close the season on a positive note. The extra practices are more valuable than another game to close the season on a positive note, because these extra practices will allow this Virginia football team to get better for next year. I'm going to leave you with a few questions before I get off this topic. Question number 1. What is Bronco going to do with the coaching staff? The people that are calling for Bronco Mendenhall to get fired, that's not going to happen. That will not happen now. Has his coaching seat become warm, if not hot? Absolutely. Undoubtedly it has. But he's not going to get pink slipped. Bronco will be expected to make coaching staff changes. And the number one guy that will be changed on the coaching staff is Nick Howell, the defensive coordinator. And frankly, he should be. I've never seen a unit perform this poorly. I'm also going to wonder aloud about Ricky Brumfield, the special teams coordinator. Special teams was one of the reasons UVA lost to Pittsburgh. Special teams was one of the reasons UVA lost to Virginia Tech. A blocked punt that led to a roughing the kicker penalty. Special teams. I thought it was very odd in the fourth quarter that Virginia chose, with all of their timeouts remaining, to kick the onside kick instead of kicking the ball deep and trying to stop the Hokies in that first series of downs and then potentially receive the ball back after using all their timeouts with Brennan Armstrong, potentially getting midfield position. I expect the defensive coordinator to be let go, and I think the special teams coordinator may also be let go as well. Bronco Mendenhall is going to stay. What are your thoughts? What is your take? Empty seats against the Hokies? thousands of Virginia Tech fans in Scott Stadium, and Virginia Tech rushing the field and planting the flag at the 50-yard line after the game was won. Tough pills to swallow. All right, let's get to local government. Man, tough pills to swallow. Gosh, that was a painful loss. Oh. Local government. Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, was ex-police chief Brackney's deadline demand day. Ex-police chief Brackney demanded $3 million from the city. The city didn't even bother responding to her. The city did not acknowledge her lawsuit. The city completely ignored her press conference with Charles Tucker in front of City Hall. Charles Tucker Jr. said to CBS 19, "We've heard nothing from Charlottesville government about our deadline demand day." Now, Charles Tucker Jr. from the late Johnny Cochran's law firm has to sue the city of Charlottesville. If you don't do it, you look like you are fake tough. You look like you're all talk and no walk. Interestingly, ironically, coincidentally, former city manager, ex-city manager, Dr. Richardson, another doctor, is now suing the city of Charlottesville, claiming the city of Charlottesville violated his First Amendment rights. He alleges that the city violated the First and 14th Amendments by allegedly engaging in viewpoints discrimination, which is the restriction of speech based on its content, and allegedly retaliating against Richardson based on the content of his speech. The lawsuit alleges that the defendants were unlawfully motivated by their disagreement with Dr. Richardson's viewpoint concerning racism in city government. Richardson is also naming Mayor Nikiah Walker in his lawsuit, along with Heather Hill, City Attorney Lisa Robertson, and former city attorney and former interim city manager John Blair. This is basically what Richardson wanted to do. This is just ridiculous. Richardson wanted to do an op-ed in the Daily Progress about what was going on in the city, why he was piecing out from City Hall. Here's the issue. So ridiculous. Richardson signed a non-disclosure agreement where he received north of $200,000 in compensation. And part of that non-disclosure agreement was he would not disclose company business to the public and to the media. So City of Charlottesville gave Richardson $200K plus in walk-away money and said, if you want this $200K plus in walk-away money, you need to sign this non-disclosure agreement that says you will not communicate with the media or disclose information about why we're parting ways and piecing out from you. You can't have your cake. What's the saying? Have your cake and eat it too? You can't take $200,000 plus in taxpayer money and then turn around and sue the city of Charlottesville for First Amendment rights violations. That is hypocrisy. That is the complete antithesis of why you sign a non-disclosure agreement. So ironically, Richardson, in the same 30-day period of Chief Brackney's lawsuit, initiates one of his own. And Chief Brackney is got to be irritated, flummoxed, irked, frustrated, and angry with Richardson. Because some of the spotlight gets taken away from Brackney's lawsuit, some of the attention, and now the media, or the perception from the public and taxpayers, oh, it's just another disgruntled former employee, just like the police chief, that's suing local government. Oh, it's now the former police chief and now the former city manager that's suing? Oh, it's another person that wants a bag of money. Oh, this guy sees that this gal is doing it, so he's going to try to do it too, to try to squeeze the city and get a little more coin, a little more jack. The perception from the public and taxpayers is it's just another lawsuit, which marginalizes the perceived impact of the first one. Certainly when they're so close together from a time standpoint. Richardson resigned. Chip Boyle's resigned. Chip Boyle's the interim city manager. Richardson was the full-time city manager. Friend of the program, John Blair, was the interim city manager. Chip Boyles was the interim city manager. And now currently there's an interim city manager. The difference between the Boyles resignation and the Richardson resignation, there's a huge difference. You want to know what that difference is? Boyles did not get a severance package. He did not get a bag of money to walk away. Richardson did. Richardson got hundreds of thousands of dollars and signed a non-disclosure agreement to hit the road jack. Boyles got no bag of money. He just hit the road jack and went to Fredericksburg, to Stafford for a new job. Richardson lives in Richmond right now, and from what we can tell, is sitting on stacks of paper. Boyles did not get the walk-away money. Richardson did. That's a huge, huge point of emphasis. When you get the walk-away money and sign a non-disclosure agreement, your word is your bond. You then cannot, in the bottom of the ninth inning, sue your former employer for more money because they violated your First Amendment rights. And I'll tell you who looks bad here. Here's who looks bad. The city of Charlottesville is being sued by its former police chief and its former city manager. City of Charlottesville looks bad. Richardson looks bad. Brackney looks bad. who will hire or trust or take in serious consideration an individual who sued their former employer after signing a non-disclosure agreement? And then after signing the non-disclosure agreement, getting nearly $250,000, then choosing to sue the city for free speech violation. I mean, it's like, it's just like, what is, you can't script this in Hollywood. You can't script this in Hollywood. Friend of the program, viewer and listener of the program, that we certainly appreciate her perspective. I believe she's watching now. Carol Thorpe. Carol Thorpe follows local government inside and out. She sent me this Facebook message. She posted it on her own Facebook page. When she posted it on her own Facebook page, I wanted to share it with you guys because I found it amusing. Carol, I thought it was very amusing. I really appreciate your perspective from a local government standpoint, Carol. I sincerely mean that, genuinely mean that. She says, Law and Order, SCP. In the criminal justice system, fast food drive-through lanes obstructing roadways are considered especially heinous. In Charlottesville, the dedicated community service officers who direct this traffic are members of an elite squad known as the Chicken Strip Police. These are their stories. You got police officers who are being asked to manage and moderate the cock block. And you know what the cock block is? That short strip on 29 that has what? Raising Cane's. What's on the cock block, Judah? It's Raising Cane's, Bojangles, Kentucky Fried Chicken. 3 fried chicken places on the cock block right next to each other. Right down the road on the cock block, you have Zaxby's and Chick-fil-A. You got 5 fried chicken places within a mile of each other on the cock block. KFC, Raising Cane's, Bojangles, Zaxby's, and Chick-fil-A. Police officers are being asked to direct the traffic on the cock block. That literally is happening. While police officers are being asked to direct traffic on the cock block, you have the former police chief demanding, you can use other words besides demanding if you'd like, $3 million from her former employer, and if she doesn't get it, she's going to sue. Black Friday was the deadline demand day. It passed, nothing happened. You got the former city manager now suing the city of Charlottesville, claiming free speech violations because he couldn't write an editorial in the local newspaper about why he was resigning. He's claiming free speech violations despite the fact that he signed a non-disclosure agreement literally indicating that he would not disclose the information of why he was resigning, and got nearly $250,000 in hush money to walk away. Year's pay. You got a police chief carousel in the police department. You got the mayor comparing the city to sexually violent allegory. You turn on the city council meetings and it's a royal rumble of tremendous proportions. What am I forgetting? Seriously, what am I forgetting? I'm forgetting something. You got how many city managers in a short period of time? Murphy, Richardson, Blair, Boyles. What's the new guy's name? Woolley? I'm doing a quick Google search. What's the new city manager's name? Mark Woolley. So you go Murphy to T. Rich, Richardson to John Blair to Chip Boyles to Mark Woolley. You've got a Nazi court issue that, thank God, is behind us, and the hammer was dropped as it should have been. A skeleton, and I'm going to get to the Dewberry skeleton here in a matter of moments, still derelict and dilapidated downtown. I mean, ay mi madre, ¿qué pasa aquí? I cannot wait for the time, and I've said this and I will say it again, I cannot wait for the time where local government and elected officials are behind the scenes, almost nameless, and driving policy and decision making that positively promotes and pushes the city forward. No one wants the referee or the umpire to be part of the football game or the baseball game. And no one wants the city councilor to be front page news in the lead of talk shows like this for negative reasons. You don't want the football game determined in the fourth quarter by a referee's decision making. And you don't want policy or the brand image of the jurisdiction to be a reflection of nastiness or poor leadership from council. I yearn and crave a time when leadership is in the background, almost nameless, creating policy that positively promotes Charlottesville. The policy and the decisions are the story, not the people, the counselors, or the referees. Speaking of Dewberry, so crazy. Johnny Dubes. Bloomberg dubbed him the Emperor of Empty Lots. 2017 Bloomberg piece. I Love Seville has dubbed him the extorting Emperor of Empty Lots. The strategy: leave your property derelict and dilapidated until that derelict and dilapidated. Derelict. Dilapidated. I said it right? Dilapidated. Thank you. Judah's correcting me. Take your property and leave it in poor condition. Is that okay? Poor? Leave your property in poor condition. And keep it in such poor condition that the local jurisdictions sprint to you with tax incentives to do something with that poor condition property. That's the strategy. Leave the skeleton on the mall rotting until local government gives you so many tax incentives that you're incentivized to do something with it. It's awful strategy, but it's a strategy. In some ways it works. He's doing it again in Atlanta. Seville Weekly has a brief about this. In Atlanta's Midtown neighborhood, there's a 21-story office tower that has been falling into disrepair for almost 2 years. The extorting emperor of empty lots owns this property. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported this past week that weeds are growing through a chain-link fence and sheets of protective plastic wrap are peeling off the building's exterior. I mean, that is literally what's happening in the Dewberry Hotel in the downtown mall. Weeds are growing through the fence downtown, and sheets of protective plastic wrap are peeling off the building's exterior. That's happening here. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I'm going to say it. If the strategy is from local government just to wait out Dewberry and say, dude, you keep paying the real estate taxes and we're going to leave you alone. That is not a leadership strategy. If this piece of property was on a back road or out of public sight, if this piece of property was tucked away or hidden and not seen by tourists, townspeople, locals alike, then you could play the wait it out game. But the mall is the crown jewel of Charlottesville and the first spot outside of UVA grounds that tourists and students and their parents and fans that come to Charlottesville for events or for weddings or wine and brewery tours or vacation, they go here. And walking from the pavilion to the code building, you don't want part of the image or the brand to be a building that looks like it's tumbling and crumbling down. You make a plan to improve the look of the mall and to maintain the quality of the mall. It's government's responsibility to make sure the crown jewel, the heartbeat of the city, is running well. It's like a cardiologist. A cardiologist understands the importance of the heart. And you go see your cardiologist if you got issues with your ticker. And if you have issues with your ticker, the cardiologist figures out a way to make sure your ticker is ticking the right way. Local government is the cardiologist, and the downtown mall is the heart. And right now, the ticker, right in the center of it, has a clogged artery. And it's this dilapidated. Thank you, Judah. Thank you so much. It's just dilapidated and derelict. Derelict structures. I can't believe I'm about to say this, especially as a libertarian that undoubtedly stands for property rights. I am so pro property rights. Property rights, property rights, property rights. Except in certain circumstances. And I cannot think of a more impactful property than the downtown mall in the city of Charlottesville. UVA is in Albemarle County. You take UVA and realize it's in Albemarle County. City of Charlottesville, the most impactful and important and influential. How's that for alliteration for you? You know I like alliteration, Judah. The downtown mall is impactful, important, influential. And in the dead center of it is a hideous skeleton. that looks like it could crumble and tumble down and kill somebody. It certainly is hideous to the skyline. If you're local government, you should figure out a way to get this structure back on. And either that's a purchase or the tax incentives needed, because all this guy is going to do is wait it out. Now, when you do offer those tax incentives, you got to have strict caveats and key performance indicators. And those key performance indicators are tied to timestamps. The development will be finished by this day, and we'll have progress reports that show us that the development's going to be done. We're going to check in with you every quarter, every 6 months, and we'll offer the tax incentives to you in stages. When the first stage is completed, we'll give you some incentives. When the second stage is completed, we'll give you some more incentives. And if you don't finish the project by this date, then you're on the hook for all the incentives we gave you plus interest. And you know, this deal was almost a done deal. Mike Signer had serious issues, former mayor of Charlottesville. Serious issues. I think all of us would say that how former councilor and former mayor Mike Signer handled August 12th left so much to be desired. So much to be desired. But he had a deal in place with Johnny Dewberry, the extorting emperor of empty lots, to finish the Dewberry Hotel. And current councilor Michael Payne went in there and shot that deal to SHIT. You know that's what happened. Signer had a sweetheart deal for Dewberry. Parking spaces, a sweetheart deal. And Payne went in there and disrupted that deal. Oh, so much to cover. Carol's got a comment. Carol Thorpe. Like when you watch the program, Carol. She says, Jerry, this week marks the 10th anniversary of the midnight police ousting of the leftist encampment of Occupy Charlottesville from Lee Park. We can almost look to that period of time during which Dave Norris was burned in effigy as the beginning of the last decade of insanity in Charlottesville. Thank you for leaving that comment, Carol. I actually remember that quite well. Do you guys remember in Lee Park, is it now Market Street Park? Is it called Market Street Park now, Judah? I think it's Market Street Park, right? I think it's Market Street Park. It was Emancipation Park. That was the interim name. We have a really good job of doing interims here. We had an interim city manager in John Blair. Oh, Mike Murphy was the first interim city manager. And then interim city manager Mike Murphy stepped aside for permanent city manager Dr. Richardson, T. Rich. T. Rich was on the job for like a year. T. Rich hit the road jack, and then interim city manager John Blair came in. And then interim city manager John Blair said, this place is nuts. This place is bananas. This is like a zoo. I'm going to go to Stanton and be the city attorney. And then interim city manager Chip Boyles came in, and Chip Boyles, the interim city manager, tried to bring some sanity and some sense to local government. But interim city manager said, good God, I got to get out of here, and I got to go to Fredericksburg. JB went to Stanton. I got to go to Fredericksburg, to Stafford area. I got to get out of here before they sue me. Now it's interim city manager Mark Woolley, who's coming from Pennsylvania. Ten years ago, Lee Park aka Interim Emancipation Park, aka Interim Market Street Park, had a Occupy Charlottesville movement in it for weeks, where people were living in tents in the park and not bathing. People from outside the area, the Occupy Charlottesville movement, which was taking place in other cities as well. Occupy New York, Occupy Charlottesville, happening all over the country. I remember walking through that park, Carol, one night, and I was like, this is the most unsafe, freaking stank, dude. It was so rank. You know what happens when you put a couple hundred people in a close area and they don't bathe for weeks on end? It smells like rotten skunk poo. That's what it smells like. And then I remember walking through that park, first the stink of unbathed Occupy people hits you first. The next thing you realize is how much drugs and drinking is happening. There were empty liquor bottles all over the park. I remember seeing needles all over the park. Needles all over the park. And then the next thing, you know what eventually led to the demise? You know what eventually led to that's exactly right, Carol. You're exactly right. You know what eventually led to the demise of the Occupy Charlottesville movement in Interim Market Street Park, Interim Emancipation Park, formerly Lee Park? The crime, especially the crime against women that was happening. The Occupy Charlottesville movement, literally, and she's right, requested a donation of 100 rape whistles from local government. Because so much sexually violent stuff was happening within those parks. Well, if you take away the police from a society, eventually crime is going to occur. Is that not common sense? You take a few hundred people and you allow them to do drugs in an open-air drug market and drink openly, and you eradicate law enforcement from the ecosystem, eventually it's going to turn into, you know what it reminds me of? Has anyone seen the movie, the HBO show The Wire? Have you seen The Wire? If you haven't seen The Wire, just a phenomenal show on HBO. I very much encourage you to spend the time watching The Wire. I think there were 5 seasons in The Wire. I'm going to do a quick Google search on that for you. I believe there's 5 seasons. Okay, there is 5 seasons. In season 4 of The Wire, a major in the Baltimore Police Department, this is a TV show on HBO, a major in the Baltimore Police Department named Bunny Colvin. Bunny Colvin. He was instructed by the police chief in an election year to juke or alter the stats because they had political influence to do this. The politicians wanted to utilize the improved crime stats for political purposes. So the police chief instructed all his majors, you will give me good stats no matter the cost or no matter what you do. Well, Bunny Colvin chose to legalize drugs in his division, in his in the portion of the city that he was policing and in charge of. And they created this area that the locals in The Wire dubbed Hamsterdam. And in this particular open-air drug and drinking market, the police did not enforce law. You could go to this area and you could do whatever you wanted. And it turned into be this, like, it's a TV show, this third world country within Baltimore where anything you can possibly imagine. I won't get into the details of what's happening. We had our version, unfortunately, it was real life in Charlottesville 10 years ago. And it was in the interim Emancipation Park. The interim Market Street Park, the interim Emancipation Park, formerly known as Lee Park. It got disbanded because the crime was so great. The police went in there and had a clean house. That's why it got disbanded. Carol says, I spoke before City Council and the media in my role with the Tea Party for weeks, warning them that it would end badly and to shut it down. I remember you doing that. And it did end badly. It ended very badly. And that was literally like, 300 yards from the crown jewel of the city, the downtown mall? Can you imagine? Let's do this. I'd love to get a medium rare T-bone steak, a Manhattan cocktail, a loaded baked potato, and some asparagus from the Downtown Grill. And on the way, Downtown Grill's closed. Rest in peace, Downtown Grill. And on the way to spend $100 a head at a la carte Downtown Grill, got to park on Market Street, got to drive by Occupy Charlottesville and the formerly known Lee Park, the interim Market Street Park, no, the interim Market Street Park, no, the interim Market Street Park, I'm so confused now. Is it it's the interim Market Street Park, the interim Emancipation Park. Gotta go get my T-bone steak, medium rare, my New York strip with my loaded baked potato and my asparagus. Gonna drop $100 a head. Gotta park by the park. Oh my gosh. There's an open air drug market going on here. There's 300 homeless people living in tents for an Occupy Charlottesville movement that's associated with a cause that only is important to people from outside the city. Crazy times, man. Crazy times. I think the future, though, is bright. I still am very bullish on Charlottesville. I'm still very, very bullish on Charlottesville. I'm very bullish on Charlottesville. I spent some time in North Carolina, and I'll close on this. I spent some time Wednesday to Sunday in North Carolina visiting my folks. They live outside Asheville, North Carolina. Asheville is a great town. Love Asheville. Few places I'd move from Charlottesville for, and one of them is Asheville. Love Asheville. But as I left with my wife and our son to head home or to just explore the area, you realize so quickly that when you leave Asheville to some of the other areas around Asheville, Hendersonville's a charming town as well. Downtown Hendersonville reminds me of downtown Charlottesville. Hendersonville is charming. If you'd like to go visit a spot, go visit Hendersonville if you don't want the cost or the crowds of Asheville. Hendersonville has a lot going for it. Hendersonville is like a smaller Charlottesville. It's about 25 minutes away from Asheville, maybe 35 minutes. As you drive around North Carolina, around western North Carolina in particular, you realize how quickly the quality of life and the economic advantages and the educational advantages, how quickly they drop in quality. There's just not much of an epicenter for employment. There's not much economic opportunity or educational opportunities. And many of the folks that choose to stay in these western North Carolina towns, just like southwestern Virginia towns, are left with little hope to climb a vertical wealth ladder. And it just generations and generations and generations of oppressed and depressed, hopeless folks. Like, if the best gig you can get, and a lot of it is the, 11, $12.50 an hour manager job at McDonald's, that's going to impact your outlook on life. And I'm not knocking those jobs. I'm not. I don't want you to think that. But that, from talking with the locals, I said, where do you work? They're like, well, we got our applications in for this manager job, for the night manager position. And it was like I don't know, I think he was maybe 27, 28 who I was talking to. You could tell, bright and sharp, but he's like, this is my home. I don't want to go anywhere. So I'm like, where can you work? He goes, I'm going to try to get the night manager job at McDonald's. We should, despite the saga that is Charlottesville, I'm so bullish on the area because of the opportunity here and the quality of life here and the medical and hospital systems here and the employment opportunities here and the educational resources here. We have a housing affordability issue. No doubt we have a housing affordability issue. But in the grand scheme of things, drive just west of Roanoke. Drive to the Bristol, Johnson City, Western North Carolina area. They don't have a housing affordability issue, but the problems they have significantly supersede the problems we have. It gave me a sense of appreciation for what we have here. And it especially gave me a sense of appreciation for what we have here as a father and as a parent of a 3.5-year-old. It made me more bullish on raising the family here. All right, that's the show. I'm grateful for you guys. Really, I very much enjoy connecting with you guys here on the platform. And we work hard to give you a good product. I hope you realize that. We'll see you tomorrow at 10:15 with Real Talk, 12:30 with the I Love Seville show. And I'll close with this. The lawsuits will fade. The poor local governmental leadership will eventually be forgotten. The dilapidated development will soon be finished and completed. And when it's done, we have this amazing nucleus and core of people in an economic ecosystem that is robust and strong. And that is why there's so much promise and potential in Central Virginia. My name is Jerry Miller, and it's the I Love Seville show. You guys have a good afternoon.